Technology moves faster, changes faster than the job description.
With the AI and automation scenarios that are entering all of our workforces now, the competencies, the ability and behaviors of being able to adapt, of being able and comfortable with change, those are an attitude type approach that I cannot teach in another individual, but our technical training folks can train you in some of those technical skills. So we're looking for individuals that have that underlying strong desire to be held accountable on their own, have self-initiative, and also be a collaborative teammate. It's those individual organizations that are focused on training and developing their employee base so that they're able and prepared to learn that skill when it comes.
Welcome to another episode of Performance Review. We have Amanda Bryson, who's Director, Head of HR for Tulsa Airports. Tell us a little bit more about your background.
Yes.
How you ended up in HR and then how you ended up at the airport in Tulsa.
Yes. I've been in the HR field for almost 20 years now. I started my career here in the Tulsa area in aerospace manufacturing, really got my teeth wet to learn how important that field is for our area. And from there, I was given the opportunity to work for a large oil and gas organization here in town as well. That time was almost 10 years where it was great exposure to some of the ins and outs of what I've learned and taken with me for process management, for communication and change management. I took those skills and from there, had an opportunity with the airport.
We spent a lot of time reaching out to employers at Tulsa Innovation Labs, and we spent a lot of time also talking to the supply chain providers, or what I call supply side providers, so education providers. Often the disconnect is the employers will say, we need ABC skills, the following skills. And then the education providers build those skills. They train the people for those skills. And then when they graduate, they're told, well, either we need a few more years experience with those skills or those skills are no longer relevant for what we need to hire. To be fair, different time horizons, right? But at the same time, as an employer, you now have the same challenges that you hire somebody. Technology moves super fast. I think you were the one who told me technology moves faster, changes faster than the job description.
That's right.
So how do you manage that? You're implementing some interesting things that help you manage that whole dilemma or that dynamic.
Yes, it's been a journey of understanding, because to your point, the focus has been more of identifying those skills gaps and then training to those skills. We took a different approach looking at how do we unite a workforce that is as diverse as we discussed, where the skill sets do cross over many different technical fields. And what we determined is that technical skills are essential. It's competencies that sustain an individual so that as those skills evolve, they are able to evolve with the role as well. So our approach was less on identifying those skills, because if you ask me to identify the skills we'll need in the future for the variety of positions and responsibilities, there's not a way to predict all of that. However, I can predict that our employees are going to have to be able to problem solve, to critically think through information and have strong decision making and resiliency and the ability to adapt to change. And we can build aptitude in those areas.
And is that culturally dependent? Company culture dependent?
Absolutely. I do think so. Because while, like I mentioned, technical skills seems to be the primary focus and still remains very important, competencies and behavioral aspects set the culture that you intend to have for your employees. Whether you like it or not, there's a culture out there. And hopefully individual companies are doing what they can to be intentional with that culture. And our approach was that we would want individuals that are that have strong integrity and that can build trust with one another, that are willing to be open to suggestions, feedback, and also asking for that feedback, being willing to share with others. And then also the ability to be resilient, because as you mentioned, things are going to change. We're going to be running in different directions, and those will change quickly as well. So how do we adapt so that our organization stays on track?
So it's almost kind of hiring for values, right? Company values, and some element. Obviously, competencies is not just the value component. There's other elements there. How do you roll that in the organization where it's not a new organization, right? It's kind of a fresh, a fresh concept that you're introducing to an organization that's been around. Inevitably, you come across individuals who may not fit or may not appreciate that sort of model.
That's right.
So when you're rolling it out, where do you stop? Is it bottom up? Is it top down? How do you? Obviously, you need leadership support to do that.
Absolutely.
What's been the biggest challenge that you've seen rolling that out now?
We took the approach of gathering feedback first, right? You have to start with a baseline of data. As a new person, going through the process as the first time, I had certain impressions, but I also had not used the tool as much as others or used the process as much as others. Once we gathered feedback from across the organization, we learned that our performance assessment process wasn't being utilized in the way that we intended, and in fact didn't really know what the data was being used for. And if we're going to be taking the time and the effort, as we should be, in providing this feedback to our employees, we should also be utilizing it in some form in business decision making. And so we took the approach of, what are the behaviors that we value as an organization, regardless of your role? And how do we incorporate that into how we assess our performance? From there, hopefully we can incorporate it through other systems and HR processes where it becomes a common language among not only our individual contributors, but also our leaders.
So tell me a little bit about when you think about the competencies and you think about the different levels in an organization, demonstrated behaviors of those competencies. Is it different, say, an entry-level employee or individual contributor with, say, yourself or the CEO or any management layer? Are there differences? And are there differences in expectations that people are aware of? And then if so, how do you communicate that?
Yes, there is. How you mentioned demonstrating that competency, and how you demonstrate that, the expectations of how you demonstrate that do change as you move in through leadership roles. Whereas someone who is an individual contributor is responsible for being collaborative and for being a positive contributor to teamwork, the leader has an additional responsibility, additional layer, a different way of how they are expected to perform that particular competency, whether in this example it would be to address concerns quickly, to be able to communicate effectively as a team versus an individual and make sure there's cohesion across the team. Those are examples of a single competency of communication that is exhibited differently depending upon your level. And we do have a different expectation of our leaders. So we outline that through a competency matrix.
Okay.
That matrix includes the same competencies. So we do have the same common language. We have 6 same competencies regardless of your level, whether that be individual contributor or up to director and CEO. Everyone has those same competencies. But we have outlined those expectations at the higher levels so that not only can leaders know what's expected of them, they now have the tools to be able to communicate that to their employees when someone comes and says, I would like to be considered for leadership opportunities. Well, this gives them some tools to explain, well, this is what is expected of you in a leadership role, and how can we make sure you're demonstrating these things.
I think that's great, because we often hear of the best engineer being promoted to the engineering manager, and then it becomes a disaster, or the best sales rep being promoted as a sales manager and it being a disaster, and then you lose a team because the guy doesn't know how to manage, or the woman doesn't know how to manage, and you lose your best salesperson because you just moved them out, right? Having this behaviors or competencies doesn't always mean it's going to be the best sales performer. It's a different behavior. It's a different competency that you need for leadership or management. So I think that's great. I've been to many offices where you sometimes see the company values or competencies or competency frameworks on the walls. Are you at that stage where you're, I don't want to say brainwashing, but you're at a stage where you have to now tell people this is what the expectations are, and you have posters and inspirational things in every conference room. Do you do that?
We are in the works in planning. I will say that the airports have done a fantastic job of creating that environment already. We have our values and our missions. We do have individual missions per department. Okay. Those are also on large display in our halls to make sure we remember what our line of sight is, how we connect to the overall success of the organization. The next step will be to incorporate these competencies not only in more visual aspects, but also maybe within our job descriptions and how we are going to screen and attract candidates. Do we want to incorporate it in other things that will only continue to create that common language?
How does a framework based on competencies versus skills, how does that change the recruiting process?
That's a really good question. Again, technical skills are very relevant, and I'm not taking away from their importance. You do have to come to the table with that expertise and understanding. However, that expertise is going to change quickly, as we know. But with the AI and automation scenarios that are entering all of our workforces now, the competencies, the ability and behaviors of being able to adapt, of being able and comfortable with change, those are an attitude type approach that I cannot teach in another individual, but our technical training folks can train you in some of those technical skills. So we're looking for individuals that have that underlying strong desire to be held accountable on their own, have self-initiative, and also be a collaborative teammate.
So what does that mean for the education system? Because I have heard, and there's been other members of the podcast who have also said, it's durable skills. It's how do you show up to work skills versus just pure technical skills. Most education programs are focusing on teaching technical aspects, right?
That is true.
If you're reaching out to either a Tulsa Tech, a Tulsa Community College, or any university, what do you tell them that, okay, these are the things that I expect the students who come out of your programs to have? And then do you think that they can be taught, or these are things that are taught at home?
It's a combination of both being, from influences from many different areas of someone's upbringing or someone's shaping of their character. When we're looking at educators, the main areas that we feel our students who are coming out of school and coming into the workforce struggle with are the etiquette that goes with being in the workforce. Some of the pieces of the puzzle that we take for granted, whether that be knowing when to interrupt someone when their door is cracked or not all the way open, or recognizing body language of your coworkers and your peers. Some of those pieces are getting lost in translation, so that our newest and brightest and most technically skilled workforce is coming to us with not necessarily the skills of being able to feel comfortable in the workforce.
Are you comfortable training that, or would you still want some of those basics to be trained before they show up?
Ideally, that would be incorporated in the curriculum prior, to be able to set that person up for the best success in whatever role they are able to pursue after school once they've completed their programming. I think that it's applicable regardless of the position they take or later take in their career. And so it's a foundational piece I think should be included in the curriculum. Now, we are more than happy to help individuals when they do come to us as employees and have a need to develop those areas. We're always willing to give a leg up for our employees when that happens. But I would expect our education system to recognize the importance of these competencies just as much as the technical skills.
What's changed? I mean, I think I know the answer, but what's changed recently that makes this even more important now than, say, 3-4 years ago?
It's definitely the influence of automation and artificial intelligence. It is the buzzword of the day, and how it's going to change our roles, our jobs, our tasks. Again, going back to more of that technical skills and task-oriented work. Those are all flexible and continue to change. And so that's why it's become more relevant of what are the capabilities we can help our employees develop so that when that new skill comes around, they're able to learn it quickly. They're able to use these skills to adapt it quickly.
Any advice or about the framework of how you're implementing it to your peers?
Start early and start often. The conversation did not start when we are in the middle of our performance review process right now. This conversation started over a year ago, right when I first was experiencing the process for myself. By starting early and often, you have an opportunity to create understanding, which leads to buy-in from a leadership standpoint. That also gives you the chance to consider things that you didn't realize were blind spots before you actually implement the plan ahead of time. So I do think the change management component is key, where we not only did we introduce new tools, we did multiple training sessions and elaborations upon the information that we shared. So there was a training in April, there was a training in May, there was a training in June, all of which that build upon one another so that we can help reinforce these changes in a positive way and also help the leaders recognize what it does for them in this process.
When we think about the competency model versus a traditional model, how is it different? I mean, traditional model is basically you're assessing, okay, what skills do we need? You build the training around those skills, and then you basically deploy that, right? From a competency first perspective, when you're doing the workforce planning, how does that work? How is it structured differently?
It is structured differently, where we are first looking at what are the capabilities that apply and are necessary for success regardless of the role being performed. That will translate regardless of the tasks associated. Once we identify what those competencies are, we develop those competencies within our own workforce. You mentioned developing training. That's similar to the common approach with skills. But where we're going in a new direction, a little different, is we also incorporate that in how we evaluate performance and capabilities. We incorporate it in also how we're going to promote, how we're going to reward our employees. Beyond just identifying the skill and training to it, it becomes an ongoing circular, like a cycle of development.
Sounds like if you piece everything together that you've talked about, it's really about, the winning strategy is all about adaptability, right? So it's not just you're building a workforce that's adaptable. And I think we're saying adaptable, not necessarily flexible, because it's a little bit different.
Those are different.
Right? Any final thoughts on that of how you think about?
Organizations that are going to be successful in the coming future are those that aren't necessarily training to that technical skill that's going to change in tomorrow and the next day. It's those individual organizations that are focused on training and developing their employee based so that they're able and prepared to learn that skill when it comes.
Great. So this was a great conversation. Thank you very much for taking the time. Again, you can find us, the Performance Review, on YouTube and various other channels. So looking forward to further engagement, and thanks for sharing what you're building at the Tulsa Airports as it relates to competencies and capabilities. So thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity. I love a chance to brag about the airports.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you.